You know who loves Izotope? This guy. Everyone here at Ruinous Media can't get enough of Izotope's intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. This year, make a resolution to yourself to say goodbye to bad audio and hello to super clear, wide, dynamic, clean audio using Izotope RX11 and the new Ozone 12. Master every track's potential with their complete 20-tool suite. Go to izotope.com and use code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. And go to izotope.com. That spelling is izotope.com. I'd like to welcome our newest sponsor, Schecter Guitars. This holiday season, go over to schecterguitars.com and see what high-quality goodies they have waiting there for you. Premium feel and unbeatable price. See why guitarists like Isaac Brock from Modest Mouse, Robert Smith from The Cure, and Ernie C. from Body Count all love Schecter Guitars. A wide variety of styles and builds with high-end components and affordable prices for touring guitarists. Built to last. Go treat yourself and try something new you've always wanted to check out. Schecter Guitars has it all. Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too.
It's about establishing a relationship built on trust and transparency, right? Because there are parts of art that are very emotional, that are sometimes very deep inside and sometimes scary to bring out and sometimes scary to admit, and that's, I think a lot of people relate to art, in this case, music, that is emotional, right? It's deep, it's personal.
What's happening? Thank you so much for tuning into Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, March 19th, 2026. On today's show, I am very honored and excited to welcome my friend and collaborator, Mr. Phillip Boussard Jr. That's him there at the top of the show talking about the intimate experience of working with artists and being in the studio. Phillip has had an incredible career and continues to have a great career. One of the highlights, or I'll say the way we work together, Phillip mixed the No Age record, Snares Like a Haircut. We met Phillip through Vice Cooler. And he's a producer, director, musician, performer in his own right. And he introduced us to Phillip. And it was great working with Phillip at his house in the Altadena area in his home studio. We had tracked all those songs with Pete Lyman, future guest of this podcast, at his studio. And then we mixed, and then I did some overdubs at our studio, at the No Age studio, and then we did a whole mix for about a month, maybe a little bit even longer, with Phillip at night. After all the other jobs were going on, we'd go over to his house and just work on mixes. And he did an incredible job. It was really fun. It was great working with him. It was really great getting a fresh set of ears on a project like that, a whole album, where we were so close to it. By that point, we'd just been tinkering away for months on a whole album, and then to get a new fresh set of ears to get us across the finish line. And then we mastered with Pete Lyman also. But it was great working with Phillip, and he had so many stories. One of my favorite stories of working at his house in his garage was he had this shoebox that had the label, had some tape on it, and it was written cash. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of funny. Somebody would just keep a box of petty cash in a shoebox labeled cash in his garage home studio. Like, probably don't want to write cash on a box if you're going to keep cash in there. And eventually, after a few sessions, I asked him about it, and he's like, "Oh no, that's not money. Those are the ADATs of the Johnny Cash records that he made with Rick Rubin." I was like, "Oh my god!" And he's like, "Oh," and then he talks a little bit about it in the interview, but he wasn't there for those sessions, but it was part of his job, part of his ongoing collaboration with Rick Rubin and the Rick Rubin Productions is to digitize stuff and to sort of keep the archives and to maintain, up-to-date files on all the archives so that everything Rick's worked on. So I think he was taking the ADATs and digitizing them or putting them into, like a Pro Tools sort of digital working session and files. So, those could be preserved for time if the ADAT tapes were to ever go missing or to get, destroyed or deteriorate over time. So yeah, that was a funny story working with Phillip in there. And he's done so much stuff. His story's great. I'm really happy to share it with you. I want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. You can write me hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com. Send me your projects. Send me what you're working on. I'm always curious to hear new music and to hear about what people are doing. If you think you'd be a good guest on this podcast, let me know. Reach out. You can find me. I'm also on the Instagram @Randy S. Randall. I've not made a Hyphenate show page. Well, actually, that's not true. I have made a Hyphenate show page. I just don't post anything there. I feel like posting through my personal Instagram works for me. I mean, there might be some marketing professionals who tell me you're crazy, but it just feels like what I'm doing in life is this podcast. And I like, sharing that with my friends and family. Otherwise it would really just be a million pictures of my kids. And I don't really want to pimp my kids out on Instagram. That's their story to tell. I don't want to have a whole life for them on living online before, they're old enough to even know what's going on. So I try to keep pictures of my kids to a minimum, but that's really most of my life. I mean, I do this podcast. I do a lot of dad stuff. We go to soccer practice. We go to PTA meetings, part of the dad's club at the kids' school. We do dad volunteer things. It's fun. So, I feel like my personal Instagram page works as a Hyphenate page. So come find me. I post fun clips there. I post the title artwork that I make for every episode. And I don't know. It's fun. Write me. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. If I go to my Instagram @Randy S. Randall and comment on the posts. If you think that Hyphenate should have its own dedicated feed, I certainly can do that, but once you look around my own, the @Randy S. Randall one, it's pretty much everything Hyphenate all the time anyway. So, follow us there. And, go follow Phillip Boussard Jr. also on Instagram. That's his handle there, Phillip Boussard Jr. You can also go to his website, philipbroussardjr.com. And now for everyone's favorite part of every podcast I do, I will spell things. philipbroussardjr.com is spelled PHILLIPBROUSSARDJR.com. And there you can find everything out about Phillip, and you can also, I think, contact him and get him to work on one of your records. If you have the money and the timing and the schedule and the project, go hire Phillip. He's an incredible producer, mixer, engineer with a long history of working on incredible records, and he's available. He is hireable. So tell him I sent you, tell him the Hyphenate sent you, and drop him a note. Hire him to make your next record. It'd be incredible. You'd be so much better off. I don't know who you already are working with, but if you have the option to hire Phillip Boussard Jr., your project will go up 10 points in my book. What does he say on his website here? He's worked with Red Hot Chilli Peppers, Slipknot, System of a Down, and many more. He doesn't put No Age on there. Just kidding. But I think we're in that group, right? Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying Mix Master March. I'm having fun chatting with all of these fun studio nerds and getting to know their stories, because oftentimes we are just, anybody I've worked with in the studio, it's mostly just working studio stuff. Every once in a while I get a funny story about Johnny Cash shoeboxes, but for the most part, we're just talking about music and the project, and we're working on it. We don't get to hear all the fun stories about where'd you grow up, who are you listening to, all these fun things. So it's a good place for me to get to do that here on the Hyphenate pod. All right. Without further ado, here is my conversation with the one and only Mr. Phillip Boussard Jr. Phillip, how are you, man? How's it going? Thanks for coming
Hey,
on.
Randy, how are you? Good morning, man.
Yeah, good to see you. I feel
You
like
too, man. It's been a minute.
Yeah, well, it was just last week. Yeah, we caught up at NAMM for a little bit.
That's right.
How was your NAMM experience?
It was pretty cool, actually. I didn't make it last year due to the fires and everything that were going on, but I did go this year. I went on Friday. Of course, I ran into you.
Yeah.
I did go on Friday, and I saw some really cool stuff, but at this point, I didn't really go for equipment and technology and stuff unless I know something that's coming out or being released. And I really went to go see a bunch of friends, more importantly, folks I used to run into in the studios, and we all have our own places now. So I'm not running into someone getting coffee or in the hallway or something. So I really kind of went out just to see a bunch of friends. And some folks have moved away, moved to Europe, moved to Nashville, moved to New York, moved to Italy. And so folks are coming in for that. So, it's a good opportunity to kind of run into folks and sort of share the old war stories and try and create new ones and all of that good stuff. But it was fun. I had a really good time. It was, again, more about the networking and seeing folks. So it was kind of like getting the old band back together,
Yeah, it's great. It definitely is one of those kind of community things, seeing the people at the NAMM and the great magnetic Nashville that pulled so many Californians away in the last 5-10 years. So
I talked to a friend yesterday who's doing the same thing. He's a little older than me, and just recently, I just found out he lost his wife in the middle of just at the end of December. And he was like, I'd already been thinking about moving to Nashville. And he's like, no, my wife passed. And he's like, I'm not going to sell the house. I'm just going to buy another one over there. And he said, that's where all the action is. And I'm going to bounce. And I thought, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, LA's gone through a lot.
Really has.
Yeah, but let's get back to the beginning. So we first met through the magnanimous Vice Cooler, and
100%.
we mixed the record Snares Like a Haircut together at your home studio in Altadena area. It was 2018 is when it came out, but we probably were working. Right? I imagine it was probably a fall release. We like to release. I remember that was always our trick, to try to release around school, going back in session so we could get those fall tours kind of riding on the end of that. So I imagine we probably did it in spring of 2018. Yeah. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we met, was it summertime? Did we meet? And then kind of talked about getting together and doing something. You guys were kind of still in. You hadn't quite recorded the record yet, if I remember
we talked
correctly.
before we even tracked. Okay, yeah. Right.
That's right. You were going into the studio in a couple of weeks, I believe. You had some demos and some ideas, and we talked about sort of maybe what your guys' plan was, and kind of went from there.
That was a fun one. Yeah, we tracked that at Pete Lyman's studio that the Infrasonic Sound before he moved to Nashville. He was one of those first Nashville moves, I remember. But we did. He had two mixing rooms, or kind of like two mastering rooms or production rooms there in Echo Park above Vintage King all those years back. And then
1176 Sunset Boulevard.
Is that what it was? Whoa,
that's the address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's funny.
And then he was Sinclair. Who was the guy? Is it John Sinclair? Mike Sinclair? He was another mixing producer guy that was right across the hall from him. He had more of like a recording setup. So we did it in there with his younger brother. He did like a Weezer record in there, I want to say. It was like a real, not like it was a pretty dead room, almost like it was just like a big mixing mastering room. But we set up a kit in there and mic'd it up pretty good. And there was an ISO booth for the amp. Anyway, I remember, that was a fun record to make, but we mixed for probably.
You just glitched out on me.
That was my max headroom. Like, am I there? Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Here, let's go.
I missed that whole last sentence.
Oh, it's okay. Here, let's go ahead. Let's turn our cameras off. Here, let's turn those off. That might be.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It might go faster that way. You see on the bottom there, a little camera thing.
I see one to the right.
Maybe that's it. Yeah,
I got it. There it is. Got it.
Okay, there we go. It'll be more like a phone call.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, I was just saying, we recorded that record in a little like mixing room. It wasn't a big production studio, but we spent a long time mixing it. What did we spend? Was it about 2 weeks? I want to say
that sounds about right. And then also during the mixing stage, We went back to what was your guys' place? El Rancho?
Gauchos. Oh yeah, did we record some more too, or what were we doing?
I thought that you guys did. I think that you guys had a couple of more songs that you wanted to add to it that you didn't record at Infrasonic, and you brought 2 or 3, possibly 4. And then we brought them back to my place, and we were working, and I liked what you guys had going on, and I didn't have some of the reverbs and plugs that you had. You guys brought the multi-tracks over. So I suggested we go back to your place and continue there so I could sort of print effects and things that I liked what had going on. And so we went back to Gauchos for a couple days, and then we came back to my place, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we were always getting our hands dirty in that. I feel like it was like the record's not done till it's mastered. We've
100%.
The creative choices are still there, in terms of the artistry and the writing or the sort of the concepting of it. Like, what is this record? It's like, wait, one more thing. Always.
That's right. That's right.
Oh yeah, always time to make it. And then I think it's David Fincher said, like movies aren't finished, they're abandoned. Like at some point, you just have to walk away from them, or someone rips it out of your hands. So stop touching it. It's done. No, there's one more thing.
There's always that element to push and just keep going because that vision just gets clearer and clearer, and you just keep going. And that's actually not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Until you get a moment to sort of step back and realize and look at the big picture and like, okay, do these elements fit? Does this element fit? Do these, songs group together, they clump together on their own, and you follow the muse as long as you can until you just sort of hit a wall and you're like, all right, what do we got out of here? Let's make this something that's cohesive, because they're all done with the same ideas and same input, but exactly.
But the tour starts next week, so we gotta stop messing with it.
Then there's those kinds of deadlines.
Yeah, just go. We're on the road. Stop touching it. Give it away. It's so hilarious. True. But so where do you come from? Where did you grow up, and how'd you first get started in music and these sort of creative audio pursuits?
Sure. Well, I am originally from Southeast Texas, probably like about an hour and a half east of Houston.
Okay.
So sort of closer to the Louisiana border, about 30 minutes from the border.
Wow.
But on I-10. So like if you just took the 10 freeway from here, you would run right through my town, believe it or not.
Wow.
A little town called Nederland. And so I'm from there.
It really sounds humid. I can feel the humidity already, just you saying it.
You nailed that on the head. It is definitely that, if not anything else. Right on the Gulf of Mexico, probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes from the beach or the coast. And a lot of oil refineries, a lot of chemical plants, you probably saw Urban Cowboy back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Pasadena is just another 40, 45 minutes away from where I grew up. And so all of that was really, really close. So I'm from there. Big, really sort of a rich musical heritage. If you go back to sort of like the 50s, when you get into like sock hop and doo-wop and stuff, and sort of early days of rock and roll.
Oh, interesting.
There was a lot of sort of regional talent in those days. And so it was sort of rich for music. But it's not like anyone really made it, massively famous on the national scale. But of course we had, Baton Rouge, New Orleans is 5 hours away. Austin is, 3.5 hours away the other direction. So we were sort of, and then Houston had a ton of national, or not a ton of national acts, but, Lightnin' Hopkins and what's his name? The crooner, Bobby Blue Bland, and a bunch of blues and R&B artists. So it always had a big sort of musical drawl and attachment to it in the region. But anyhow, I was a working class parents. Didn't know anyone who knew anything about music, other than my parents had a huge record. My dad had a big record collection, and they would get together on the weekends with friends and would play records till, late at night, and they would, party and dance and have a good time. And then, my dad always had a pretty pretty decent stereo, so to speak. So I was always the kid that was around records and around equipment. And I obviously was drawn to it and kind of grew to have a knack for it. So my dad had reel-to-reel tape decks and things of that nature. So I was always kind of driven and drawn to it. So music, that is. And I ended up learning how to play drums in the 5th grade. Had a cousin in Houston. My mom is the baby of 9 kids, and so they all had kids, and they were very, very close. So we saw them a lot.
Wow. That's a big extended family.
Massive. Yeah. Thanksgivings and Christmases had 60 people, minimum, and it was just insanity. But so much fun, and there was a lot of music that came in with those holiday events as well, and a lot of French music. I'm French on both sides of my family. So Cajun or Acadian was definitely in my heritage. My aunt and my grandmother used to speak French, Cajun French, and we listened to radio programs every Sunday morning that was completely spoken in French and played nothing but French music.
Oh, that's interesting.
Johnny Jono was the DJ on, I believe it was KLVI 56, and played like 3 or 4 hours of just this crazy, amazing Cajun music. And I'm so familiar with that.
Was that Clifton Chenier?
Clifton Chenier, 100%.
Yeah, he's the big name of the accordion, the Creole.
Exactly.
Cajun accordion,
Lots of that stuff, and a lot of I would love to go back and try to find some of these broadcasts because I can't even pick out outside of Clifton Chenier and some of the talent. I later on relocated to New Orleans to go work at a studio, but even then it was so far removed from my childhood. I don't know if those guys were still alive or how many of them had passed on, because that Harry Schultz was one of them. But those guys, those artists, I mean, that music is so old, and it's so rich. And I would love to go back and try and discover some of these broadcasts. I don't know if they're on YouTube or if people have, transferred cassettes or whatever, and try to find this, because I would love to learn about that stuff again. But it was so amazing. But so I grew up around a lot of music, all different genres of music. And then I learned to play drums from an older cousin who was very well established in junior high and high school. I believe she was all-state drummer at the time, and taught me a bunch of rudiments and how to keep time on a drum set. And then Later in 6th grade, after that, I joined, I was able and old enough to join like marching band and concert bands. So I did, and I played in all of those bands through junior high.
On drums? Doing like drum line stuff? Wow.
Yep. Marching band and concert band, played marimba and timpani and xylophone.
That's
cool. Tritoms and bass drum and concert bass and all of that sort of stuff. And it sort of kicked off from there, and all the while I'm, buying records. And in those days, dating myself here, but you could buy 8 tracks. And but I'm listening to Elvis, I'm listening to Kiss, I'm listening to all the typicals, Ted Nugent, Peter Frampton, The Doors, Hendrix, sort of all of that, Zeppelin, all of that stuff.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then how do you get involved in like production or like engineering, studio stuff? I mean, that's sort of where, our paths sort of crossed. How does that start for you?
I guess, so the music thing, really was a big thing. And I didn't really know anything about studio production as I'm in junior high and high school. And I just knew that I loved music and CDs, and I got a really good stereo at some point when CD players came out. My parents bought me a nice component system. So I'm, hanging around the record stores and I was just obsessed with sort of technology and bands and artists, and was always, I remember I would buy records just based on what the album cover was, or maybe the label, and maybe not knowing a whole lot. But in those days, I didn't care so much. I was on the hunt, right? I'm on a journey. And this ended up sort of, sadly enough, gets me more obsessed with like getting into technology and buying turntables and buying mixers and buying, reel-to-reel tape decks or dual cassette decks and so forth. And I'm always the guy that's got the stereo system. So we're making tapes for each other and, compilations and so forth. And I get to a point where I friend a guy who I found out who actually is a DJ. I'd seen Bowie. I'd just seen Bowie in '87 at a concert, and their local rock station's playing that same tour, from Montreal. And I call up the radio station, like, hey, what is this? I just saw this tour like at the Summit a few weeks ago. Where did you, is this live? This is like Sunday in the afternoon. I'm just naive and dumb at this point. I don't even know what's going on. But I'm like, how the hell are you playing this? Right? Like how, he's like, oh no, it's a CD from, whatever, broadcast network. And this is from Montreal. And he's like, but hey, if you want a copy of it, it's on CD. I'll be happy to meet you somewhere and you can record it. And I'm like, what? So I befriend this guy and I get these CDs and I record this Bowie show. It's from the Glass Spider tour. And now I've got a copy of it and I'm losing my mind. And he's like, well, hey, if you ever want to come down to the station, you should come and check it out. So I'm like, well, hell yeah. So I go down to the radio station and now I see the turntables and the carts for the tape decks and all of the console and all of the compressors and the EQs and everything on how like broadcast is happening. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, how can I do this? How can I get involved in this? And I wasn't really interested in getting on the mic and being some sort of personality, but I just wanted to fucking play records, and like have fun, and turn people on to stuff that I was turned on. And so that sort of started the bug. Anyhow, so I ended up leaving town to go to college, and I find myself in Austin, and I'm going to school and I'm working in a restaurant. And
you're going to UT?
Not at this time.
Okay.
The goal is to transfer in there, and to do that, I'm trying to bring up the GPA and transfer in and get all of that sort of dialed in. I'm at Austin Community College, which a lot of people did in those days. You would go in and take all the easy classes, bring your GPA up.
And it's cheaper that way too. You're not paying
totally cheaper, and you get the cores out of your way. So once you hit university level, after you get the associates, like it's all core for your topic of study at that point.
Yep.
And honestly, I'm interested in fine art at this point, right? I don't even realize like, studio recording and production as like really a career. I'm more interested in being an artist, and so a visual artist. And so I'm in school and, grunge is really popping off. And Austin at that time, was just packed with clubs and bands. I mean, you could go see, 15 different genres of music 7 nights a week. It didn't matter, Yeah. And so I'm going to see all these indie and punk shows and Flaming Lips came to town all the time and, Butthole Surfers and, and all of this stuff. And so I'm going to shows all the time. I'm like losing my mind, loving it.
Why am I spacing on the name of the club right there on the corner? What's the... Emos, of course. Yes.
Emos, yeah. Liberty Lunch, Electric Lounge, so many.
Huge. This is sort of where South by Southwest becomes South by Southwest as well, right?
That's correct. I mean, it had started, late 80s.
College at the right time there. Wow.
Totally. And I ended up, it was part of so I ended up being a volunteer and working a lot of South by Southwest shows. I got on with the studio crews. I had passes where I'm with the studio crew. So I'm really sort of like a runner as opposed to like, holding up in a club and running sound. In those days, I'm running fresh DATs to all the engineers that are, recording shows all night long. Cause there's, there might be, it depends, but there might be 10 or 12 bands performing in a day. Wow. They would start at noon or 2 o'clock and then would run till midnight. And I don't think anyone really went on after midnight in the clubs, but on the outside stages, there certainly were, But anyhow.
What were some of those shows? I mean, I'm just so curious from that time, like what stands out? Was there anything, those early sort of South bys or just that general college live show experience?
Sure. Well, I mean, it was sort of all of the above because even if bands weren't playing South by Southwest, they would still come to town and play clubs because there were so many people coming in for the festival, so to speak, right? But oh my God, I saw an early show of Bush at Liberty Lunch, like right when their first record came out.
Okay.
Tragically Hip, which became a massive band in Canada. I saw them in a 300, 400 people venue a couple of times, actually, because they never really hit it off in the States like they did in Canada. But like Love Battery, let's see, Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper was always playing. Who else did I see? All, do you know the band All?
Oh, sure.
Descendants,
Yeah.
All. Let's see, who else? Morphine, David Byrne. They're all, and there's so many like Texas singer songwriters, and then you get blues, Sonny Landreth, like blues guitarist. So many people, it's such a blur because I was just going out and seeing all sorts of shows all the time. So maybe some of those bands played during South by, maybe they didn't. Cracker, Lenny Kravitz, Big Head Todd and the Monsters. I mean, Ian Moore was popping off at the time. Charlie Sexton, some iteration. I think this is pre-Archangels. But anyhow, just so many different bands. And then, of course, I could get into Flaming Lips and Fear and I'm trying to think all the other sort of punk show, Rubber Bullet out of Dallas, so many bands. And it was just a blur because it was all really, really starting to hit. But at some point I figured out look, music was changing. We're getting out of the glam metal world. Nirvana was hitting, Pearl Jam was hitting, Soundgarden. And I'd been a Soundgarden fan since Louder Than Love. So I was sort of a little aware of the change, Jane's Addiction, the sort of the tide shifting that was happening in modern music. And I didn't know how to be a part of it. And I just thought, well, in those days I was like, I need to figure out how to work in a recording studio. I think that's really what I'm really interested in because the DJ thing wasn't really something that I found I was that drawn to. I really wanted to know how to make records. So I just pulled up the Yellow Pages and went down, looked up recording studios and went down the list and called every single one of them. And in those days, there was a lot. And asked for an internship. And most of them said, we don't have an internship. We're not hiring. But there was one guy, his name was Ben Blank. He was a TV producer engineer, and he had his own studio in Hyde Park and called Ben Blank Audio. And he's like, well, I don't really have like an intern program, but I could use some help around here if you want to come down and maybe, clean the toilets, take out the trash, get some tacos. And I was like, hell yeah.
Grab a coffee in the morning. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what I did. I was managing a restaurant part-time, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I did. I quit Papacitos and went and interned for Ben over at the studio and learned, walked into a studio and saw like a real console, a real tape machine and like a real place, and was just okay. Just walking in, I was like, I think I'm kind of meant to do this. I can feel the vibe. Learned what, and then he started teaching me signal flow, mic patch bays and mics and all of that stuff. And I was 23, 24, 23.
It's perfect. Yeah. The world is yours. It's a whole new world, right? You're through the looking glass now. You're on the other side, seeing how, from a fan to how does this get made? What's happening here?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. And who were some of the bands or some of the projects coming through there? Was that, you said it was mostly TV production stuff? He was doing broadcast?
No. He worked at the local TV station. So he had his own private studio.
Oh, I see.
Oh man. He had mostly local regional acts. I'm trying to think, so long ago. And I remembered walking into the tech shop and seeing like the posters on the wall, right, of clients. And I want to say like possibly Nice Strong Arm was a punk band, but he also had a lot of sort of Indigo Girls. Didn't come through, but they were already well established, and there were some duos in town that were sort of doing that kind of vibe, the songwritery sort of thing. And I cannot believe, if someone were to mention some of these band names, I would be like, yes, absolutely. But my old brain just can't remember some of that stuff anymore. And I feel so sad because I remembered going like, oh, I know these people. I know these people. I know this artist. I know this artist. I know this band. And I was stoked. I was like, okay, this is actually music that I know and that I recognize, so it was really, it's really cool. And Ben was great. He was a big music fan and turned me on to a bunch of music. But yeah, so, and that was actually, like tape days, still analog tape at that point.
That's great. So, and you're board opping, you're doing all this stuff, you're running cables, setting up mics.
Yeah,
I'm
not board opping yet. I'm sort of, learning the room and plugging things in and how to make a list of, the itinerary of sort of where this mic goes and what channel this goes into. Learning all of that. Really green, really young, but like great attitude, just fucking stoked to be there. And it was cool. And then when the client would come in, he would be like, okay, can you just run out to the front and man the phone, man the doors? And they would only, sort of like, we're going to be in here working. You kind of man the front. So someone's always sort of available. And then I'll call you if I need you, and it was that kind of vibe. And so I wasn't really allowed into the room. And after a while, that's what I really wanted to do, was get in there and like understand what the magic was, so to speak.
You're right next to all of it. You're so adjacent. So what happens next? When do you come out to LA? Is that the next move?
Well, no, a few things happened, and I'll skip over them. But yeah, so I ended up getting laid off, and he's like, hey, I think basically like it got to a slow season, so to speak, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. He wasn't paying me. So he ends up laying me off, and I've got the bug, right? So now go get another job at a restaurant because I got to pay bills, right? I'm living on my own. I don't come from money or a trust fund kid, so I got to figure this out. So I'm living on my own, I'm still in school, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. How do I get a job in a studio? So I recognize that ACC has like an audio production class. So I'm like, right on. So I take this audio production class and get like a proper book and a proper, 48 volt and condenser microphones and cardioid patterns. And I start learning the technicality of it. And I also take a music theory class. Like I'm going to really learn this because I'm musical as well. So I get into that, do that. And I'm in the pawn shops. I'm scouring for microphones and any beat up, cheap recording equipment of any kind, right? I'm just going to figure this out. And then I meet a friend at a sister restaurant that I'm working at, and he's actually doing it. He had taken the production classes at ACC that I took, and he's now interning at like a proper studio. And I meet him and we talk, and he comes over and I show him my equipment, and he tells me about his equipment, and we're like, hey, we should do this together and maybe start a production team or something or another. And let's go see shows. And he's a musician, and let's figure this out together. And so that kind of happens. I get into the second part of the production class, and I actually so in the second production class, actually, the last couple of classes take place at a proper studio. At the time, it was called Lone Star Recording Studios. And it was actually, I think it was built for or by Christopher Cross. Like he did a lot of work there. And it was built for a studio from the ground up, meaning they had floating slabs, they had ISO rooms, they had a machine room, and all this. It was proper. And Timbuk 3 had done a lot of stuff there. Christopher Cross had done a lot of stuff there. A lot of blues and jazz, local blues and jazz was done there. And it was owned and operated by this guy named Ed Gwynn, who I think had a job proper at Advanced Micro Devices, but also had the studio off to the side. He was a record producer engineer as well. And they had a New England Digital Synclavier. They had an MCI console, had MCI tape machines, and proper mics, like 67s, 87s, and 414s, and 421s. And I mean, God, I even remember when like Sennheiser had dropped the 409, the proper 409 mic, because my friend ended up going out and getting one, and we were so pumped. Oh my God, a 409! It was $300. Can you imagine? So expensive, but man, this is going to be great. We were all freaking out, right? And so I'm taking these classes. The last couple classes they take place at the studio, and that's where we sort of kind of do like the finish off thing. And I met the house engineer. His name's Jim Watts. And my friend earlier who introduced me to this sort of stuff was named Ethan Allen. And so I meet Jim because I do the classes. Then I go back to Ethan later and say, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And Ethan's like, well, I'm working at Lone Star. Like that's the studio I'm working at. I got an intern there. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And how killer. And then he's like, yeah, but I think I'm going to leave. And, if you wanted, I could introduce you to Jim. And, I think it'd be great if you wanted to take over. That way he wouldn't have to look for someone else. And I'm like, perfect. This is great. So I ended up going and meeting Jim, and Ethan makes the introduction, and I end up getting a job there. Again, no pay, clean the toilets, take out the trash, go get the breakfast tacos, set up for the sessions, tear down. And, comes a time when we're kind of shifting from the tape machine, and whoever, I forget who owned the console and the tape machine, and whoever that person was wanted it back. Mackie had just come on the scene. And so we end up getting a Mackie 32 or a 24 by 8. And then we get these brand new killer tape machines called ADAT. This is cutting edge technology. It's a VCR tape. It's got 8 tracks, heliarchal scan. We can get up to 48K. And that's what happens. We tear out the console and the tape machine, and we get the Mackie and the ADATs, and boom, off we're running. We got the DATs. Now we're like cutting edge, right? We're spilling off onto 2-track digital. We're multi-tracking digital, and we're cutting edge, right? So again, not booked every day on 12-hour day sessions, but it was on and off, on and off, on and off. And it also came another time where it's like, okay, Phillip, all right, sorry, man. Thanks for everything, but we got to let you go. Just nothing, nothing was going down, and they're not paying me anyhow. So now Jim taught me a lot at the time on so many different things. And we also, sidebar, it was also the very beginning of sort of what became a pattern in my life. And during that time in Lone Star, like I said, we got the Mackie and we got the ADATs. And there was a time when Ethan was really seeking out talent and artists to become a producer. He and Jim had worked together a lot because they both worked at the studio, and Ethan had approached a band and had this idea of removing the console and the tape machines out of the studio and going on to a location and making a record on location. And that's what we did. So they found this church about an hour and a half outside of town, an abandoned church. They got the power company to come out and put a pole up and run power to the church. We rented it for like 48 hours, maybe 3 days. And we loaded all of the equipment out of the studio I had an old Volvo station wagon, at the time, and in their cars. And we took all the equipment down to this church, hooked it all up, made a record, tore it all out, and drove back and loaded everything back in with like 2 hours of sleep. We slept in the church. I'm not even sure Ethan or Jim slept, to be honest with you. I was at a point where I just couldn't stay awake anymore. But we made a proper record, and with this band called the Sharecroppers, and pulled everything out, and then went back to the studio, and then they ended up mixing it later on. So I leave the studio. And I ended up going back to Houston for a little bit to kind of save some money. I'm in debt a little bit. I'm trying to change some things. End up working at Rice University radio station. I'm a DJ. I become one of the engineers there, and I'm sort of doing shows, and I'm trying to handle the equipment and so forth. And Ethan calls me, a few months later and says that he had gotten a job at the studio in New Orleans called Kingsway. He was looking to jump ship and go freelance, and needed someone to come in and train. And was I interested? And at that point, I'd already knew Kingsway. I helped Ethan move out of his house and move to New Orleans. And I'd never been to New Orleans except for when I was like 10. And said, yeah, I'll be there next week. And I think I drove up next week, got a lay of the land, saw the studio, met everyone there, found an apartment, and then just picked up my life and left 2 weeks later and took a job at Kingsway. Now we're talking about full-on proper record production, API console, Neve consoles, a textbook example of every condenser German Neumann microphone available, just an insane amount of vintage equipment. And this is 95 or 6 at this point. And maybe 7, maybe 97. It's really a blur because I just didn't look. I just went forward. I went forward and never looked back, right? And that was when I started working on like a legitimate major label, Columbia, Elektra Records, Warner Brothers, Sony, and I was working with Afghan Wigs and Squirrel Nut Zippers and Dave Perner and Black Crows and proper
big time.
This is big time. And that in like I said, Ethan, who was the house engineer there, had sort of, like I said, was leaving his staffship, as it were, and needed someone that he could train, take over his position for the long haul, not a guy that's going to come in for 2 weeks and realize, hey, this isn't what I want to do, or I can't hack the hours, or I can't hack it. Like, he needed someone that he could trust and take over. It's a coveted position in a lot of ways. And he and I had a long rapport. I've learned pretty much everything from Ethan and Jim at that point in my life. But when I got to Kingsway, I got a real education on what real recording was like, from microphone selection to preamp selection to how to conduct yourself in a session, how to calibrate the tape machine with different calibrations. I mean, we had a Jimi Hendrix session come in towards the end of my tenure there, and we were working on it was called Band of Gypsies, was the original release. Sure. and had been in. They had discovered a bunch of tapes, and they were remixing it and redoing stuff, and it came out. I think it's called Live at the Fillmore, is what Eddie Kramer brought it in, and Janie Hendrix, Jimmy's sister, and John McDermott, I believe, was head of MCA at the time, and had cataloged and knew a lot of things or most everything that Jimmy had done at this point. And so we were tasked with this situation of where we were copying tapes over, right? There was a bunch of different various formats of 1-inch, 1-inch 8-track or 1-inch 16-track and in, various odd formats. And we'd known this ahead of time. They had all these tapes with them. And we were literally like copying analog copy from the master to a copy. So we had like 12 or 14 different tape machines. Which we had a Studer 820, we had one 2-inch 24-track, but I also had a duplicate Studer 24-inch, 2-inch 24-track, so I could make tape copies, right? That's how we did it in those days. Mm-hmm. And so I had a duplicate tape machine for each format that we need, and I'm literally copying stuff over from a 1-inch 8-track to another 1-inch 8-track, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to learn how to calibrate tape machines really fast, and quickly, and from various formats, and various levels of calibration, +6, +9, +3, whatever else. Sometimes we used SR, sometimes we didn't, and had to learn how to do all of that stuff. But I had to be able to do that, because if I didn't, then I had no business being in the house engineering position, right? I mean, you're the expert on.
Yeah, you had to be the guy.
Yeah. It was Daniel Lanois' studio. It was his private place. It was starting to sort of come online commercially. And I remembered having a conversation with him when he was checking in on me as Ethan was sort of in the steps of, stepping out, and I'm in the process of stepping in, and he kind of called to check on me. He was really sort of quizzing me, so to speak, but just wanted to make sure that, I was the right person, because his name is on the line too. And he had said so many words. He's like, Philip, you've got to be an expert on every piece of equipment in the room, because sometimes you'll have clients or folks that'll come in, they're not familiar with it. So you need to make sure that you're familiar with everything in the room, because they're relying on your knowledge. They're relying on your expertise to point them in the right direction. And that's the job in and of itself. And it came from the man's mouth, It's like, who am I to argue and not? And it was like, you got it. I mean, and then at that point, I'm reading manuals. I'm plugging in tone generators into like the H3000 and just like going through the parameters. And that's the only way and Ethan and I would do these, we would do these little exercises. We had DA88 when they first came out, and we would have these little exercises where we put a tape in. And he would say, okay, you got 5 minutes. I'm going to leave, and you got 5 minutes to put something on the tape. And I would put something on the tape. Could be a drum beat, could be a vocal beatbox beat, could be a drum machine, could be a guitar, bass, Wurlitzer, could be anything. You got 5 minutes, right apart, put it down. And then when you're done, I'm going to come in and listen. Then I have 5 minutes to put something on top of it, but you can't be here, right? So we would do these little exercises where we would create something without one another, but you had 5 minutes to do it, try to fill up a 8-track DA88 tape, And then so we would take those work tapes and would, mess around with the delays or the reverbs or the H3, and just we would have material that it wasn't, you can't do that with a client tape.
Sure.
Let me just take a, throwing muses tape. Let me just throw it down on the tape machine and put it on there and run it through the fucking, whatever. Like you can't do that.
I'm experimenting. I'm learning how to use this new piece of machinery here.
Is it okay if I cut on the kick drum here and take these 16 measures out, and edit on the tape? No, it's not okay. You can't do that.
But if someone were to ask, or you find yourself in a situation, you need to know how to do that quickly, and the only way to do it is to do it, have done it, and made all your mistakes, somewhere else on your own time.
And that was the thing. I mean, even when we, at Kingsway, even when when we weren't working on the session or a session, I'm there anyhow. I was there, had to be there at like 9 every morning anyhow, because I got to take out the trash, got to mop the floors, feed the dog, help make coffee and do whatever else, even though there's not clients and there's a staff of us there, right? So that was the position. And again, I was not getting paid. Like I was waiting tables. I worked at Virgin Record Store, like I was doing everything I could to sort of, pay the dues so I could prove to them that, I was worthy of getting the job, and so, but that was the deal. So I was there even on my days off, or even at night or whatever. It just was, it was my home, even though I didn't sleep there. I was there, 12 hours a day. We listened to music. We cleaned the studio. We're repairing. We didn't have a tech on staff. So I remember being on a session and, working nights, and if a, stereo bus went out on the console, and I'm 3:00 in the morning, I'm back at the console with a soldering iron, soldering a new 2520 into the mix bus, on the output, because who's going to come down at 3:30 in the morning and do that for me? Nobody, and the session stopped. So I knew enough that, I've done this before. It wasn't my first time to solder a 2520 in or take one out. And that's how we learned. We learned on the fly. So when you're not in session, you're doing tech days, you're cleaning up, you're recalibrating, you're taking inventory, and you're testing cables, you're testing pedals, you're testing everything. And is
this built into a house, this Kingsway place?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about
kind of glazed over that, huh?
What Kingsway is, yeah.
Yeah, it was a 3-story mansion built in 1860 in the French Quarter. So it was on the edge of French Quarter. It was on Charters and Esplanade Avenue, correct?
Yeah.
And it overlooked the Faubourg-Marigny neighborhood. Because it faced Esplanade and it faced the Faubourg-Marigny, so the back of it was the quarter, and huge house, massive. I don't even know the square footage. It was just massive, but it was not really built. Obviously, it was not built for a studio because they weren't building studios pre-Civil War. FYI, for all the history buffs out there. But it was Dan's sort of workshop, and had brought in a bunch of equipment, and all the studio and recording equipment was all down on the main floor downstairs. And then there was a stairwell in the middle of the dining or the living room that we actually used as the control room. Would go up to the second floor, and there was 4 or 5 bedrooms, 4 or 5 bathrooms, 6 maybe, where clients and artists could live or stay there while we were working. And then there was another stairwell that went up to the 3rd floor that had sort of its own sort of private, it was kind of Dan's place when he would come back in town, like an apartment.
Daniel Lenoir
sort of thing.
This was sort of, and he owned it.
Correct. That's right.
Okay. Wow.
He made a bunch of records there. Neville Brothers, Neil Young, Emmylou Harris, or not Neil Young. Neil came in on Emmylou Harris's record. Emmylou Harris, Wrecking Ball was done there. Yellow Moon, most of Yellow Moon was done there. I think it was also done at another
Automatic
house.
for the People. This is the
Automatic for the People was
REM
done there.
record, yeah. Pearl Jam
Correct.
Vitology. I'm doing a little bit of poking around on the Google machine here too. I was like, wait a second, I want to make sure I'm giving the full story of this place that you're talking about. Like, oh, okay, it's
that is absolutely
quite a place
right.
to cut your teeth. I mean, this is not a unique, or this is not just a hole in the wall carpet. This is not as great as Sound City. All the records were made there. It's kind of a shithole in the valley, with smelly carpet and cigarettes in the wall. That's not Kingsway. Kingsway is a very unique place. It's very
much so.
Okay.
Very
just want to
much
make sure
so.
I paint the picture for people who aren't familiar with this kind of
Yeah,
setup.
sorry, I didn't mean to glaze over that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, extremely unique. Hot tub out in the backyard. It was secluded. You wouldn't know it was a recording studio if you walked by it. What else? I mean, it was really special, really magical place. I really miss it. I actually went 2 years ago. Dan ended up selling it. Anyhow, we'll get to that later. I went back 2 years ago, and someone bought it, and they're keeping the name Kingsway. It's now like an event center for hire, like weddings and parties and events and things. And I had gone in, and obviously, clearly, all of the equipment is gone and all of that. But all the rooms are still the same. The flooring is all still the same. There's just some incredible terracotta marble flooring and all of the some really beautiful architecture inside the place that is still there and still intact. Because remember, they went through Katrina. And it had gone through storms all through there, but it is still just as gorgeous as it was when I was there.
Amazing! Wow, and that's a big place to land on your first jump out of college, taking the thing, landing there, and just being the fly on the wall of a thing like that, of a place like that. I mean, that's a big jump in. And then what's next after that?
So we end up, we're motoring along, and Dan decides he wants to sell it, right? He's not really spending time in New Orleans, and he's mostly in California and Mexico and Canada and Jamaica, and realizes, he doesn't want to have a commercial studio business, right? It was his private workspace, and then word got out after he made some records and figured out that, okay, I can make a little money on this when I'm not here. And then it sort of turned into its own thing. And I think he just decided, I don't want to be responsible and do this. So I'm going to cut this loose. And so put it on the market for sale. And then that left us sort of, all of us, trying to figure out, okay, that means we're not going to have a job at some point when this place goes, because nobody ever keeps staffing when you purchase a new entity. So I think we were just sort of figuring out, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Some people lived in New Orleans, were from there, and who knew what they were going to do. Some of us weren't. And so I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? It was either New York or LA. New York, even then, was still really expensive and practically unaffordable. But I knew someone, Ben Mumphrey, a local New Orleans guy who I'd known for a long time, part of our sort of circle of friends, had a studio there as well. He had moved to California and was attending recording school, and was talking to Georgia Graham on the phone. One of the staff, Georgia was a staff at Kingsway, and she's on the phone and she's relaying messages. She's like, "Hey, I'm on the phone with Ben, blah blah blah." And so we're talking, and Ben suggests, "Hey, he heard the news that Kingsway was going to be closing, and he had suggested that I come out to California." He was working at a studio here in North Hollywood called O. Henry. And I was working at O. Henry, and he was going to recording school. And I was a little ambivalent at first. And he was like, "Look, man, this is how it's going to go. Once you get to California, no one's going to care what you've done in the positions because I'd already done so much time as a runner and, sort of gopher kind of position and not getting paid. There was no way in hell after at this point at Kingsway, I'm on staff. I finally became the house engineer. I'm on staff. I'm getting paid. I'm doing this for a living now, right? I'm not working at the record store or making waiting tables anymore.
You're official.
I'm full on like a proper house and staff engineer this is how I'm paying my bills. Yeah. And I just couldn't stomach the idea of starting over again. Yeah. Like I just couldn't do it. And obviously I could, but I just wanted to do everything in my power not to. And Ben was, he was like, look, cuz here's the straight deal. This is how it's gonna go down, and I just said, you're probably right. How can I argue with that? And he just said, look, send me your resume. And I did send, in those days it's faxing. So I faxed him my resume like that night, and he gave it to his studio manager the next morning. The studio manager called me and said, hey, I got your resume from Ben, blah, blah, blah. What's your story? What's the deal? And I told him a little bit about me and my sort of pedigree and what was going down. And he's like, but you're in New Orleans. Why are you applying for a job here? I was like, well, if you give me a job, I will fucking move to LA. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, well, I'll tell you what. He said, when can you be here? I said, when can I start? And he said, well, you can start as early as Friday.
Amazing.
I'll see you then. I hung up the phone. I called Dan, who was in Oxnard, California. He had a studio in Oxnard. And I told him, hey, I got a job at Karen's suggestion, who was a studio manager. She said, you should call Dan and let him know. Great. Yeah. And I called him, and he said, asked me all about it. And he didn't know the place. He said, well, yeah, you can come to he had a studio called Teatro. He said, come to the Teatro. You can come live here, use the phone. I'm leaving. I'm going back to Ireland to work. And you can come use the phone and stay here until you get on your feet. Everything's fine. Amazing. And I did. I literally put everything I had in storage over the next 2 days and left and ventured to California with some clothes, like $300, book of CDs and some books. Never been to California. Wow. Never been west of the Texas border. Wow. And just fucking drove straight.
That's cool. And, so you're staying at Daniel's place in Oxnard, but working down at O'Henry in Burbank.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So I became a runner, and it was a paid position. I became a runner at O'Henry. And, they've got 2 rooms, a big, huge scoring room that they were getting like, Fox scoring the overflow for movies and soundtracks. There was some, huge 70, 80 piece orchestras, right? Wow. Beautiful API tracking console that they were using. And Hank Santacola was the manager. And they were so warm, so gracious. They greeted me with open arms. They treated me with respect. It was amazing, an amazing facility, staffing, just incredible people. And then they had a little SSL room on the other side where they were mixing to picture. And then some clients would come in. Eartha Kitt came in, Katie Lang came in, and it was like, okay, here we are. I'm in fucking North Hollywood on Magnolia again, a place I'd never heard of. And working, and then I got to know the staff and Hank and, very well. And he did a bunch of records and was a skilled engineer all on his own. And it became great. And then there were some situations where some of the assistants, I think, were getting tired. They were getting burnt out, and they were talking about leaving. And so they approached me and said, hey, some of these guys have expressed interest in leaving. Would you be interested in taking on one of the house roles positions? And I was like, fuck yeah, of course,
That's the idea. That's what do you think I've been doing here for running, because I love running to get coffee and
right. Yeah. I'm getting bagels and fruit trays and cleaning up and doing everything I can. And, at this point I'm hounding the assistants, right? Because I'm not allowed in the rooms while they're working. So I'm hounding the assistants, like, what mics are you using? What was it like working with him? And, trying to get all this just sort of intel. Sure. And and Mark Howard, who was Dan's engineer for a very long time, is also working at Teatro, And so I tell Mark, I'm like, hey, look, man, I got this opportunity coming up. And that was sort of the thing that I sort of told Hank and the staff there. I was like, man, I've never done any scoring. I've never recorded an orchestra before. I don't even know any, I've seen a Decatree in a recording book, but like, I don't know that I could do that. And he's like, no, we would train you on all of that. And, like we would get you up to par before we would just set you free on your own, like we have, we want to make sure that you're set up for success, and I thought, oh, wow, okay, that's unreal. So I ended up telling Mark Howard what I didn't know is Mark is actually trying to finagle an on location. And by the way, Teatro is an old movie theater that had been converted into a studio.
Yep.
So they took all the seats out on the floor and built, Wayne the Brain had built this platform that was, I don't know, 100 feet long or longer. And, as the floor declines down on the floors, you're walking down into the pit. He just made this level flooring. And we had two Neve 8068 consoles put together. We had a BCM 10 or two BCM 10s. We had a Neve Melbourne 16 channel. And again, it's Dan. He's, got so many vintage microphones and A80 tape machines and so much gorgeous equipment, a Steinway Grand and a D and everything's mic'd up. Two drum sets mic'd up. We've got guitar amps set up. All of his guitars are all sitting in the back chairs of the seats. The seats fold down, and then a Les Paul is sitting up in it, and there's 90 guitars, dobros, and lap steels, and everything. Just if you have an idea, and it's there's paper globes hanging from the ceiling. We've got oil wheels. We've got film projectors. It's insane. And I don't know if you've seen, Mark Howard has a book on the studios that he's created on his photos. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's some really incredible illustrations of the environment that Teatro was, as well as Kingsway. They're both featured in these books. Mm-hmm. And so it is just a vibe like unknown, right? So I tell Mark, and he says, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Well, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do another studio install down in Malibu for a record I'm going to do. And really what I need is for you to stay at Teatro because, so-and-so's coming in and I need a house engineer. And I was like, what? And I'm like, well, dude, this is a really good opportunity for me. And I don't have, they even said they would get me an apartment down there, the Santa Colas. And it's like, look, they said they'd get me an apartment. Like, this is real, man. He's like, no, I'm real too. Like, do you want to... he was really curt, really blunt about it. He's like, look, you can either go do that or you can do this and make rock records. Which one do you want to do? And he sort of gave me an ultimatum, and I stuck with his idea. And I told the Santa Colas, unfortunately, I hate to decline, but thank you so much. This is amazing, but this is the world that I know. This is the world that I've trained in. This is the world I want to work in. Yeah. This is the path that I want to take. It has nothing to do with you folks or anything, but this is an opportunity that unfortunately I can't let slip away. And they understood. So I stayed out at Teatro and ended up becoming the house engineer there and worked on records, and Mark went off and did his thing, and I helped him build another studio in Malibu for that, and then I worked in Teatro, and then it got to an end where Dan was like, okay, I'm coming back in town. He bought a house in Silver Lake, and he was like, we're getting out of Teatro. Phillip, can you handle it? So now I'm packing up the consoles and packing up all of the guitars and hiring the movers and the cartage and figuring out where to go. And we put half of it, and me and Mark build a studio and dance house in Teatro, in La Bella Vista, where it still is. He still has a studio in La Bella Vista in Silver Lake. And then we built a temporary spot in Glendale, put another console in there and made records in there. And I lived in there. I didn't have an apartment for the longest time. And then a little bit later, I go on tour with a band to Germany and Poland and Austria, and I come back in July, and it's like Dan's not doing anything, so he's got no work. Mark's not doing anything, so he's got no work. And I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. And I end up making some phone calls to some people, and I end up getting a job through a recommendation from Trina Shoemaker, who was a godsend. It gives me a reference to Sound City, and I end up getting a job at Sound City in Van Nuys, California.
That's what we're talking about, yeah?
Yeah. So I became a staff. I was a runner, and then I became a staff guy there, and worked on, again, incredible. I mean, Nirvana Nevermind was done there. Tracked there. On
Rumors.
That Neve.
I mean, that's
Rumors. Yeah. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, like 4 or 5 of his records. Fleetwood Mac.
But what year are you getting in there? You're there in the 90s now?
Yeah, I'm there 99. I get in
Okay.
there 99.
Wow.
Exactly. And so I worked there for a couple years, and I really wanted to be, so I'd already done a couple of house engineer stints, and I got to go back to running again. And I got to go back to running again. I misinterpreted on how I was going to get hired. It's all fine. I made it work, and I said, okay, I'll do this. But really my goal is to be, again, a paid runner. But I really wanted to get into the room, and I got sessions, but that's all I wanted to do full time, and just didn't work out that way, because everyone was vying for a house position at that point, and I ended up leaving. I did a stint with Chris Lord-Alge, became his assistant for 5 or 6 months. That was a whole different world. I'd never come from the SSL world, the power pop world, or pop vocal. And Chris definitely had, Chris even then he had a thing, right, where he does his thing. And I wasn't used to that. And it was very, very, very different for me. Not bad, just very different and unique. And it was a big learning curve for me, because I'd never even seen an SSL before in person, let alone try to run the automation and the recall system, and then recall all of his equipment and do all the patching. I mean, he had a real setup then. I mean, and to be fair, Chris is still doing that today and is still pumping out, pumping out great music. But at the time, it was very foreign to me, and I was probably in over my head. And anyhow, I left, and because it wasn't something that I wasn't in love with. I was having a difficult time, and I found myself sort of, not loving it. So I got a job at another studio in town. More of a rock room, had a Neve tracking console called the Steakhouse. And I became the house engineer, like pretty much right out of the gate, and started working on records, like 2 and 12-hour days. And got a heavy hand and some suggestions, and I'm doing all the work where the engineer is just kind of sitting at the desk pushing faders, and I'm plugging everything in, making lists. And
but by this point, you know the game of LA studio vibes. Who's working, who's not, how to get it going, what do you do, what's making money.
That's right. Mix, and I was excited, man. I was back in a room. I was back, like doing the work, and I loved it. I didn't want to do anything but that. And I mean, I've always been a pretty happy, chipper, upbeat kind of person. And I never met a stranger, and I was always just fucking stoked to work in music and meet cool people and great musicians and great producers. And I'm that guy, man, that when I go to the record store and I buy something, I'm reading the credits. I want to know who played on it, who produced it, who engineered it, what studios. So there were people that were coming in that I knew their work before they even hit the door, and I could talk to them about it, right? And I would ask them questions just because I was a fucking nerd like that. And through that time, I worked on a Rick Rubin record with this band called Palo Alto. And shortly thereafter that, I get called into. I did a record with Greg Fiddleman shortly after that, who was one of Rick's staff. It's not a staff guy because it wasn't like he was on salary, but Greg had done a lot of records with Rick, and Greg had recommended. I'd done a record with Greg at the time, and we were pushing boundaries. I think we worked like almost 72 hours straight, man. And in fact, I talked to him about this recently, just a couple of weeks ago, because he found some video footage of something that his wife found or something. He was like, and he told me that he had seen some video footage of me digging in the patch bay on this thing. And it was 26 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I remember that record. Like we worked I think we got 2 hours of sleep, man. They're like 18, 20-hour days. And those days he's like, oh, I know, man, don't try not to remind me. And so it was because of Greg. I had a really good rapport with him. We really had a great time. We got a lot done in a really short amount of time. And he referred me to Rick's office for something. And I ended up getting the gig. And I got hooked into Rick Rubin's camp, and been with it, still with it, man. That was in 2000 and end of '01.
That's
for the Mars Volta.
That's wild. And then Rick is, you know, not based out of one particular studio, right? He'll have several records going at once. He'll have several crews on different things going on, you know, time, place, locations, all over the place. So there's a there's a rotating kind of cast of characters or central core crew. You're sort of on the call list. You're in the room. Yep. What's happening here? We got setting it up.
Yeah, and it's a little different now, obviously, because things have changed. But in those days, yeah, I mean, he was working, you know, at, you know, all of them. Cello, it became East West, Cello, Ocean Way, now United, Village, Sunset Sound, you know, I mean, all of them. Sometimes all at the same time, like you said. Like there were times, you know, I ended up he had a place owns a house in Laurel Canyon, and we call it the Laurel Canyon House or the Houdini Mansion.
Okay.
And that's where
was that the Blood Sugar Sex Magic house? No,
exactly. Yes, that is the house, same house. And so that's when I got looped in. We did with Dave Schiffman, we did a Mars Volta record at that house, and again. Not a house, not a studio, like a mansion. We brought in a console, we brought in tape machines, we brought in all of the equipment, all the cabling, the furniture, the beds, all of that was brought in. And when we were done with the record, all of it moved out. It's just an empty house. You know, little did I realize, oh, hey, I've actually done this before a couple of times. You know?
It was not unusual to you to find an empty mansion somewhere and build a recording studio in it.
How bizarre! I had no idea that you know my life was going to take that path. And I worked in that house for 10 years or more. In fact, I was just there a year and a half ago for the Turnstile record. We did it up there, and that's the first time we had been in that house in probably 10 years. And we had to go in and sort of put it all back together for Turnstile and consult. And we're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is where we put this. We did this.
What works and what sounds good in which rooms. And
absolutely.
Wow.
I built the studio again, you know, all over again and did all the treatments and everything else. Did Rick produce that record? Is that why it was there? He's the executive producer. He didn't produce it. He executive produced it. Yeah, exactly.
Wild.
But yeah, it's been a long run, but been a long run and a fruitful one. But now Rick owns a studio in Malibu called Shangri-La, and he's predominantly, you know, sort of works out of there. He might, I mean, I don't know what he does all the time anymore, but I know that when I was working with him there, you know, back in the days, he would be working on 3 or 4 records at a time. We were doing like, you know, Chili Peppers and Dixie Chicks at the same time. And maybe even Neil Diamond writing sessions were happening then, or it was, you know, System of a Down and maybe Neil Diamond or something.
Sure.
But then there were times when we were at Shangri-La, before he owned it, he had moved to Malibu, and Shangri-La was a commercial studio and has been there since the early 70s, right? Because the band was out there, Bob Dylan was out there, and you've seen the Last Waltz documentary. All the interviews of the band are actually out there at the studio. And so it was a viable studio. Clapton had done records there and all sorts of folks, but it was sort of off our radar, I think, or at least it was mine. I can't speak for Rick. He may have known about it forever. Who knows? But I'd done some scouting around. We were trying to find a room for Metallica and Weezer. We wanted to do them in separate places, but find the best rooms for them. And I'd gone to a bunch of rooms around town, and I flew up to the Bay Area, and I brought like a kick drum and a snare drum, all these rooms me and Fiddleman did. And then we would just record the room, like not even go through the console, but just record the room with a pair of like 87s. We brought the same mics and just kick snare, like a quick little silly beat. And I brought like my Digio 3 rig and just a pair of 87s in the room, in the live performance room. And then basically we were just listening to what the room sound was, you know, and then I went up to the Bay Area and we did all these rooms in town, and then we'd play, you know, I made a CD, room A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, and then have Rick and the bands choose whatever sound they liked best. And then that's how we chose to do, you know, those records, you know, but at the time, so Shangri-La was chosen for Weezer. So we went out to go do Weezer, Andrew Sheps and I, and they didn't really have a staff at that time. It's really just Andrew and I trying to figure out the console. It's an old 70s API and maybe the monitor section, and how, because it was a little different, and sort of the best place to put the drums, and we just kind of had to figure it out on our own. But
which Weezer record was that?
The red one.
Okay.
And so it was so much fun, trying to figure all of that out, and sorting it out, but a little bit later on, we started working there because Rick lived really close. And so we started working there more and more and more. And I remembered there was a couple of weeks where we were working on like, and but it was like we were doing like ZZ Top stuff, and we were doing like Josh Groban, and then maybe like Kid Rock vocals at night, like all at the same time, without tearing down the previous session in the live room. Like, it's all happening at the same time. Just insanity, man. But like,
it's the time to do it.
I mean, what a great time to be alive. I mean, talk about, just jumping from genre to genre, your piano vocal, almost operatic with Josh, and then ZZ Top. It's boogie blues, which, riff city, right? Yeah, Billy's amazing. Frank and Dusty, I mean, they're unreal musicians. But like a whole different vibe. And then, Bobby's coming in at night to do Kid Rock vocals. We'd cut it all at Sound City, so it sounds killer. He had a killer band. We had Chad Smith on drums and Blake Mills on guitar, and, just incredible bands. And just, he's going for his record, and he was, doing a songwriter thing, and it's really good, man, really good. But jumping from genre to genre, was so much fun. And I got to say, over the course of looking at my tenure with Rick, that's probably my favorite thing. And now I've got favorite records that I've done for various reasons, and they're all favorites in some sort or another. But being able to jump from like hardcore metal, like Slipknot, to like Neil Diamond, like is insane. And I loved it because as a record collector, I probably have, 5,000-6,000 vinyl albums, still, and I still buy them. But I got a lot of Neil Diamond records, man. I got a lot of Barbra Streisand records. I'm not going to lie. She's amazing. But also I got Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and Fear and everything else in between. And that's the beauty of music, man. I love it all. There isn't anything that I don't appreciate in some form or another.
It's so cool. I mean, I got to ask a little bit more just about Rick just before we move off. And I know, obviously, there's a bias there because you work with them, but I'm just so curious, in terms of, I think in terms of record producers, he's obviously, the top of the stack, one of the most well-known, most famous, most productive, most highest selling, he tops all the lists of when you think about what a record producer is. But I think for people that are in, that world, he's also this polarizing sort of enigmatic, there's, all the things that are Rick, he's nothing if not idiosyncratic and anachronistic and of his own, a man out of time in so many ways. But
absolutely.
How do you speak to sort of what, I think the simplified question that people pose online, or the quick thing people will throw at him, like, what does Rick do? You know what I mean? How does he produce, or what does he do as a producer? I mean, but you're in I don't often talk to people who are in a unique position as you are, to sort of, who've worked with them for so long and seen it. I mean, how do you characterize that, or how do you, how would you sort of talk about what makes him as a production, how is that different, and how do you kind of, comment on that? It's unique to say the least, but how do you see it, or what's your unique perspective on it?
Absolutely, it's unique, and I think every producer that's out there that calls himself a producer is trying to be unique. They want to be unique, right? Like They're trying to bring their vision, whatever that may be, to the project. Rick, in a lot of ways, comes from it from an angle where he's a music fan. He might not have as many vinyl records that I do, but I've seen his CD collection. It's insane, and again, it runs from ABBA to Zappa and everything in between. but he is a music fan. And although I come at it from an engineering perspective, obviously it was very technical early on for me. And even when I work with him, I'm an engineer, right? So he is not interested in, he's never going to say, can you put a Pultec on the vocal? He'll never say that. I'm sure he knows what all the equipment is and what they're used for, but he doesn't want to really get caught up in the details. He is more focused on performance, feeling, and emotion. And that's it. And, there's a lot of people say a lot of things about him, some true, some not, and I'm not really here to confirm or deny any of that stuff because, but he's tuned in, and some people may attribute to his tuning in as being aloof. Let me tell you, he is far from aloof. I mean, he is really tuned in. He's so tuned in that he is drowning out sort of the activity that's happening in the control room, because he's zoning in on the music that's coming from the speakers. He's not a guy that comes into the, walks in the controls. Hey, what's happening, everybody? How's it going? Yeah, did you see this on, such and such? He's not that guy at all. He comes in and he says hi, he smiles, he waves at everybody, says hello, good morning, whatever. And then goes and sits in his spot and is like, if the band's tracking, and that's really what he wants. When he hits the door, he wants us to be in record. He wants to know that work's happening because that's why he's there. But if they're not, he's like, well, what's happening? What's going on with the band? What's the action? He's not there for free coffee and conversation. He's there to work.
Right.
And he's already in, to be clear, because I worked in his house for a really long time down in his studio at his home. He already know, by the time I get the call to come in on the record, there's already a roadmap and a game plan, like what's going on with the artist. They've had multiple meetings. They've had multiple conversations about direction, vibe, favorite artist, favorite songs, favorite sounds, favorite vibes. There's already been a discussion of demos, and where to take this, where to take that. There's already a real plan in place in terms of what they have discussed. If it's an artist, if it's a single artist and we've hired the band, or if it's a band unit, that's already been decided. So by the time I get the call, we already know what's going down, and we're already set up and we're recording. So he's not going to come in and tell us what the plan is, because it doesn't really matter, because that's kind of the beauty of working in the studio. Things happen inadvertently. We call those magic, right? So we don't want to, he might set up a scenario where something may happen, but he's not going to come in and lay down, hey guys, it's going to be A, B, C, D, and E, and it's going to go down like that, because then it becomes forced. It becomes predictable. We want organic things to happen, because that's what separates the music. That's what the humanness and the organicness in the music is what separates itself from stuff that feels forced or planned. Right?
It's so interesting. I'm just curious though too, just from that technical side, like you said, he's not talking about Pultecs, but will he say the drums could be brighter, or is this is there an element of that kind of engineering, or is this sort of like it's you just know what a drum sound is that you want, or how was that discussed? Like, is that with the band? It's more
vague.
I see.
He's a firm believer. And he's talked about this on his podcasts and interviews over the years. He's a firm believer in giving as little direction as possible, but he wants you to interpret what you think he says, and that's great for creative people, right? Because I'm not going to tell you what to play, but I want you to play X, Y, Z. And he's not going to say, C sharp, D,
Sure,
whatever. It's not going to do that.
We're darker,
But-
we're brighter,
Right.
we're up, we're down, we're left.
It's too
we're
busy.
too red,
it's too
too blue.
sparse.
Yeah,
The drums sound boxy. The bass sounds woolly.
Okay.
And it's up to us or me to figure out what is that. I mean, I know, I've been
Sure,
around long
sure.
enough now. I know kind of what the terminology is.
You can do the math equation of woolly, there's about 4 steps that, with these 4 different pieces of equipment, and each one of those
Yeah.
things, a little here, a little there, a little this. And then you look back and then you get a head nod and okay, we're not woolly anymore. Now we're in
That's
the
right.
spot. Yeah.
And you might even get, he's brutal. You might even get, it just doesn't sound good.
Oh,
And,
that's
and-
nice. Yeah.
And then, but he's,
Sure.
he's not being mean. It's
yeah.
first of all, it's not personal.
Right.
And it's not even directed at skill. It just doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound right. And he's not telling me that, we're doing a bad job. He's just like, it's not sounding right to him. And it's so many things he doesn't know where to start.
Got it.
But because if he didn't trust us,
Sure,
we
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
be there. Yeah, it's all right.
So if he could say
we
it
gotta
doesn't,
start
it's
backtracking.
not sounding good. Great. Well, 5 minutes we'll have, and realistically from an engineering perspective, we know, what we had mic'd up was scenario A. Let's go to scenario B. We're going to swap out a microphone. We're going to do a different placement. We're going to present the next, sound. There's lots of sound scenes that can be created. You can put a Bonham drum up. You can put a Motown drum up. You can
That's
do
right.
this. You can do that. You know what I mean? And then you go. So you split the difference, right? I mean,
That's
are
right.
sort of what as an engineer, is all of these kinds of tips and tricks and things to kind of dial it in and shape a sound.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It could be the room sound. It could be close sounds. It could be the snare. It could be the vocal. And,
great.
and obviously that allows me to ask more questions for him. And, let's play it back. Do you like, and then I can start, or we can start determining what he likes, what he doesn't like. And then it's a process of elimination at that point. It's like, oh, okay, we can address that. That's easy. Or, all right, it's the drums. We need to move them. They're in the wrong. This spot isn't working. We want a more closer, tighter feel, or we want a more livelier feel. It could be anything. It could be anything.
And therein lies that opportunity for a creative engineering application. As a sound engineer, as a recording engineer, now the ball is in your court to make creative calls, correct?
Absolutely.
That's sort of
100%.
Because without having that direct address where he's saying, I want to boost the 12K on this, on the bottom of the snare. He's not going to say that, but
No.
if it's not really peeking through enough, or we're looking for a little bit more energy out of the snare, I know some things I could do. You can,
That's right.
You make those creative calls yourself, or I think this could work. Let's flag this. Let's bring those baffles in a little bit more. This kind of thing, or maybe
Exactly.
that's just it's a metal snare. I think we're going to need a wood snare. Let's go ahead and swap
That's
those
right.
out and just see.
That's
Just
exactly
a call like
right.
that,
That's exactly right. Certainly, when you have a band that's performing, there's always a band performing live, like rarely are we working with like a singer and a drum machine, like it's never really like that. And I can only speak to the records that I've done where it's predominantly a live band on the floor. That's what we're recording, right? We're recording as a unit. It might not be their band. We might have hired guys, but it's predominantly a unit on the floor. And as we're moving from song to song, and ideally we're going to get a master take in 2 or 3 takes, right? Maybe 4. But there's no limit, but it's like either you're feeling it and you're close, or we're not feeling it. Let's move on to the next tune. Right. And that's going to come between either the artist and or Rick, or both. Right. But when we're moving from song to song, keys are going to shift, tempos are going to shift. Yeah, the Black Beauty's not working for this ballad. Let's get a wooden snare in here. Let's get something a little more woody, a little more softer, a little more, sampley. Sometimes, drum sounds now have snare drums. They sound like a sample. There's these splat, sort of dead, not a lot of sustain. And I love some of it. It sounds like a sample, but sometimes it fits really great in a track, right?
Application.
Or or you need something with a little bit of a ring, a little bit of liveliness, a little bit more openness to sort of sit between. Maybe you've got some distorted guitars or a bunch of guitars, guitars that's kind of, rocking and big chords, and you need something to breathe and help support,
But I get the sense too that from talking with you that there's, the Rick sort of position is in that macro sort of, umbrella sort of listening experience, to where there was something he liked about the artist to begin with, of their catalog, of who they are, the excitement around whatever the band is. And then the idea is to sort of create a scenario where then they will make the next thing that will fulfill what they have done well in the past, almost in a way. And by keeping this hands-off sort of remote sort of position, it's sort of, you're creating this, creating a scene and introducing the actors to it, or introducing the creatives to it, in hopes that the results, what's going to come out of the speakers next, will be the progression that is what he's imagining. Was like, oh, what I love about this artist is this is great. I want to see their catalog evolve into this. Or I feel like in today, the record that's going to come out next year should sound like this type of record from this kind of band. And without having to put, get down on his hands and knees and build the car, he knows the car that's going to work on the road. He knows that car is going to do the laps. It's going to win. It's going to win the race next year. But it's got to look like this and have this shape and have this vibe to it. But I don't want to be down there tuning up the engine. I'm not going to get my hands dirty changing the oil on that car. But this is the thing if we can get this person to do this on the road, it's going to win.
That's right. And also, there's a lot of truth in there. And that's also, by discussion and an agreement within the artist. Mm-hmm. He's never going to force or push an agenda that he thinks the artist should do without their approval, right? They've got to be, he does not want to get in the way. He wants them to be themselves 100%. Mm-hmm. And wants them to feel good and, invigorated about what they're doing. And then he helps make a call on, yes, this is amazing. We're almost there. Keep going. 2 more takes, or it's maybe not as good as it could be. Let's address it another time. But he's never going to push an agenda on his own without their blessing, because it's not him. It's not him. It's them. It's their artist. Their artistry. It's their work. It's their path, and he wants to support that the best way that he can. And
it's interesting too, because coming from a direct experience as an artist working, it's the art. It isn't always the conflict. Isn't always the conflict in making a record isn't always the artist versus the studio or the label or the thing. Sometimes those conflicts within a band or within the artists themselves.
100%.
Oh, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know if I should do it. And those sort of self-doubt and the creative process can be an internal struggle. And I would imagine some of that sort of the psychology, the Zen of Rick, the sort of the Rickness of Rick that he brings to it is something to do with that communication within the artist and sort of walking them through their own internal creative process. And then once they've arrived at a place where they go, oh, I can do the thing that I want to do, then everybody else is there to sort of serve that. But sometimes it can be, there's a storm with internal creative process within that artist that hopefully he's there to sort of oversee in a way that has nothing to do with a microphone or a snare or a room or
that's right.
The sustain of where but somebody's got to be there to make that call, but that's not going to be him. It's more about, you have as an artist, you have the voice, fulfill your voice, fulfill the thing that's inside of you. And they're like, but I'm scared. I can't do it. What if the world reacts? And he's there to sort of guide that process, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and as you know, Randy, it's about establishing a relationship built on trust and transparency, right?
Yeah.
Right. As a creator,
feel comfortable to make the record, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because there are parts of art that are very emotional, that are sometimes very deep inside, and sometimes scary to bring out, and sometimes scary to admit. And that's, I think a lot of people relate to art, in this case, music, that is emotional, right? It's deep, it's personal. And as creators, we sometimes having a soundboard of someone that we can trust is everything. It allows validation that the truthness or the honesty in what we're trying to say is actually being told the way that we want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a soundboard that says, yes, this is good, because we're so close to that emotion, right? We're so near it that it's bringing up, it could be tearful, it could be, embarrassment, it could be shame. But if it comes across in a way that is obviously human and emotional, we can't really step outside it and say, yes, it's coming across the way that I want, because we're too close to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that may take a while. It may take a week. It may take a year. It may take a decade to really analyze something like that. But when you have trust and honesty in a relationship and a creative partner who will say, yes, this is good, or actually it's not working well, maybe let's try a different approach. Like, we're cheerleading the courage, the idea, the support that is needed to transpose that idea. So let's look at it in a different way if that's really what we want to do. Or it's working and this is great, keep going, or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Let's readdress this at another time. Let's move on.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think as a creator, you're tapping into something that's really sensitive, and sometimes the emotions can take over. And like I said, you can't see the forest from the trees. You can't step out of it and understand. So you have to divulge some trust and honesty in a partner, knowing that person's not going to let you down. And so that you can sort of tread those waters, right? Because they're tricky. Mm-hmm. No one's excited to go down those roads, but when you do, and it almost becomes therapeutic after you hit it in a certain way that, oh, this really came out great. I really feel good about the way that I did this. Mm-hmm. And it becomes therapeutic, and then you heal from that. If it's something that's obviously, hurtful and whatever, but as an artist, reaching down to something that's sensitive and emotional, it's about establishing trust and honesty in a partner. And I don't know, that's what I feel like a really good producer does, because, we're there to critique performances, but it's not personal, right? It's never about the art. If we didn't believe in the art, we wouldn't sign on to do the project. Right. It's about critiquing constructively the performance, as is it getting the point across in a way that either the producer is working on, or the audience will the audience react to it in the way that I feel like I'm relating to it, or not. And then you and I as a if we're working together, then we figure out, do we continue on, or do we address it another time, or do we just let's not do this now, let's readdress it another way.
Yeah. I mean, the projects that I've worked on in a producerial sort of role, or sort of engineering or helping record, friends' projects, I always feel like my job it's the interpreter, like to sort of understand the band and what the record is that they're hearing in their head, and then making sure, trying to get as close to that sound to come out of the speakers at the end of the day. It's like understanding who the band is, and then listening to them and going, what is it that you're hearing in your head? Because most artists will have an idea as they're writing the song or as they're recording the song, like what it is they want to sound like. And then it's just, taking away everything that isn't that, or making it. That's right. It's just making it that. I have two last weird Rick questions. I know we've gone over the hour, so I've taken so much of your time.
Sorry, I've been really blabbering on.
No, it's great.
No,
I love
2 hour mark here.
It's great. I love it. No, it's going by. It's flying by. And I don't know if you can speak to this, but I'm just curious. In a project with somebody like Johnny Cash and his, the breakout sort of single of those later records, the Nine Inch Nails cover, Hurt. What? I don't know if you can speak directly to this, but, where is that coming from? Is that coming from Rick? Is that coming from a bigger sort of idea in terms of just the A&R side of it, like pulling that song out? And how does that, do you have anything you can talk about with that type of a session?
Unfortunately, I was not around at that time. I have worked on, in some capacity, I've worked on every single one of those records, including in the box set as well, in some various form or another. But but I was not around during those days, and unfortunately, I never got to meet Mr. Cash. I have been tasked with handling in terms of vault and archiving and stuff. I've had my hands on every single one of those releases that Rick has done in some form or another, or multiple forms or another. But unfortunately, I was not around. I never got to meet him. I never got to work with him personally. But I've worked on just about everything that he's done with Rick. And from what I read about the Hurt and the approach, and I can only paraphrase here because I wasn't around, so I didn't actually meet. I wasn't involved in any of those conversations. But the things that I read was that Rick was a fan of that song, and most of those songs, a lot of those songs are covers, right? And it was at a time where, the country music industry had turned its back on Johnny, and he wasn't doing well. And this is all public knowledge at this point. He wasn't doing well. I think Rick went and met him at a casino. He was playing a casino gig. And Rick had met him, and they talked about working together. And I think Johnny was excited because here's this young guy who's done all these things that Rick had done, and was willing to, Johnny was a boundary pusher, man. So he was willing to take risks because that's pretty much all he had ever done, and found like, okay, this could be really invigorating. But I think there was also a little bit of dubiousness to him as well. But anyhow, obviously it worked out. That first record, American Recordings, has some really fantastic stuff. But what it did is it cast Johnny into a whole different category, right? Like it's just him and the guitar. And I believe that record is all done in Rick's living room with just Johnny himself standing in front of Rick. With two microphones. Some of those songs are just mono only. It's just Johnny's vocal, and you hear the guitar bleed in the vocal mic. But in some of those tracks have an actual microphone on Johnny's guitar and his vocal as well. It's all done on ADAT, and basically it was just Johnny performing for Rick, sort of showing him, this is what I can do. This is how I do it. And Rick thought that they were just amazing and spectacular, and said, no, this is the record.
That's the record.
This is the
Just
record.
do that. It's not the demo.
It's all here. It's the essence of everything that
strip it all back. Yeah.
It's everything that's here that needs to be, and then some. And it's still one of my favorite records out there. Just certainly Delia's Gone just blows my mind every time I hear it. But anyhow, I know after that they, then they, he started looking at other songs for Johnny to sing because he's just got this vibe and this thing. And I'm not sure about I don't want to speak to the whole idea as Johnny's aging and getting older because, June is in the video, and it's a Mark Romanek video, and it's unreal, and it got all these awards. And obviously Trent was doing Trent when he wrote Hurt for himself. And, I don't really want to speak to that because I don't honestly know. I've only read things, in interviews and over the years about it, but I don't really know how accurate that is. If the whole idea of Johnny was aging and kind of looking back on his life and Trent's "You Can Have It All," My Pile of Dirt. I don't really know, but I want to think that there is some reality in there, but I cannot say because I wasn't involved and wasn't there. But sure. Man, I love the myth that it is there and that it is true because it fits the narrative.
Yeah, it all comes together. There was a time and a man and a place, and it worked.
Is there a better narrative for that than that whole idea? I just want to say yeah, but without any certainty, it's hard for me to say, but I want to believe it. That's for damn sure.
Got it. And then again, speaking of Rick Rubin records that you haven't been part of, I'm just curious, why is Rain in Blood the best Slayer record? What from a technical engineering, songwriting, all things above, if I were to look inside my own gut, I guess I'd say like, what makes Rick Rubin a different producer than anyone else? Of all the accolades, all the awards, all the things, all the millions of records sold. I would just say Rain in Blood, but I don't know why.
Yeah. I wish I had an answer for you because I kind of share, but I got to say, and I love Rain in Blood, But I also love like World Painted Blood, the very last one. Like I love Slayer, Season of the Abyss. I mean, we could go on.
I know. Okay.
And I love that stuff.
Did you work with them ever? Were you guys?
I
ever?
did. Not over the years. I've worked with them like multiple times, in various incarnations. So when I was a staff engineer at Sound City, they came in with Matt Hyde and was working on, 99, 2000, it's on the tip of my tongue. So Matt came in and did some songs, and then I think started the record, and then they went up to Bryan Adams' place in Vancouver and did it up there. So I kind of worked with them on that. I was really sort of a runner. I wasn't really the assistant on the record, but I met Carrie and Tom and those guys.
Maybe that's God Hates Us All, came out 2021 or 2001.
Yes, that's right. I think that's exactly what that was. Although I didn't know that at the time.
Sure.
So they were around then, and I met them then, and I was, pretty blown away. Like, fuck yeah, Slayer, like amazing. And then later on, as I, hook up with Rick, and I kind of became kind of like a staff guy for him, for lack of a better term. And although I was never really on salary or like a direct employee, I was always freelance, right? But I just kept getting phone calls and kept going and doing sessions and doing work with him. So, but there was a time where I was sort of down in his house. He lived he had a place in West Hollywood, and he had a studio down at the bottom. And I worked in there a lot. And there was a time where, we were doing all sorts of things. And like I kind of told you about, all the multiple records that was happening at the same time. Greg Fiddleman was in there. I was working with him for like a couple of weeks, and we were working on like, Chili Peppers and Slayer and like Johnny Cash all at the same time. Again, it's another one of those genre hopping, elements that went on for like 2 weeks. But I think at the time, I guess it's Deaf American or maybe American at that point. I'm not sure which one. We're working on possibly a box set, and we were working on some live shows, and we were mixing and stuff. So I worked on some of that stuff, and I don't even know if that stuff came out or what happened with it. It was so long ago. It was like 03 or 04 or something, and it's all a blur really. But so I worked on that in some part, and then later on at the very end, through Rick, I ended up working on tons of records with Greg Fiddleman, and he ended up doing the last one, World Painted Blood, with Jeff. That was Jeff's last record. And I think Greg and I were working on something else, and he was working on some last few bits. The band was not there. He was working on mixing or editing or vocal comping or doing something while he and I were working on something else at the same time. But it was still sort of World Painted Blood before it actually got mixed and put out. So did I really work on that in some form or another? Yes, for an hour, a couple hours here and there, but it wasn't like I was on the sessions every day or even working with the band specifically, but it's sort of kind of over the years.
Got
it. But in terms of Rain and Blood, I don't know. Is it the songs? I always kind of think it's the songs. It's the riffs, I mean, they're just undeniable. And I mean, man,
you got Andy Wallace engineering as well.
Yeah.
That's
right.
That's not going to hurt it.
No,
yeah, but the songs,
still,
right, but the songs are the songs. Yeah.
It's still an incredible mixer. I mean, we're still chasing his records, At least I am.
Sure.
What would Andy do?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's not a bad question to propose when mixing.
Yeah. When faced with the question, why not? Yeah, it's one thing to do. Well, Phil, thank you so much. I mean, we could talk all day long. There's so many more things. I'm sure we will.
Of course.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Where can people follow you? What's the best way if somebody wants to reach out? They've gotten this far in the interview and they say, I want to hire Phillip, or I'm interested. I want to know more about him. How can they get in touch with you?
I have a website, philipbroussardjr.com. I'm on all the socials, Phillip Boussard Jr., Instagram, Facebook, and X.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on X. I haven't gotten on Threads yet. Oh, I'm on Blue Sky as well, Phillip Broussard Jr. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll have links down in the show description. So if anybody wants to get in touch or reach out, that's incredible. That would be great. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Randy.
You,
it's great to talk with you, man.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks.
Talk soon. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yes, the legend, Phillip Boussard Jr. Wasn't that an awesome conversation? I do say so myself. I want to say thanks to Heal Microphones for hooking us up with this cool microphone that you hear me speaking into now. Go to HEIL Sounds, I believe it is. HEIL Microphones. I think they have Heal Sounds is what we have landed on. HealSounds.com. Yes, that is correct. And check out their microphones and buy yourself a cool microphone to make records and podcasts with. Also go follow Phillip Boussard Jr. on the Instagram. Phillip Boussard Jr. at Phillip Boussard Jr. And you can also go to his website, philipbroussardjr.com, like he was saying. And, tell him what's up. Tell him Hyphenate sent you. Get a sense of, of what he's worked on, and then also see if he's a right fit for your project. He wants to, he's got a whole message me section. Interested in working together? Fill out some info and I will be in touch shortly. Can't wait to hear from you. He wants to hear from you. Go make your record with Phillip Boussard Jr. You will be so much better off using a rad professional like Phillip. And he brings a lot to every project he works on. And he's affordable. So go pay the man to make an awesome record with you. All right. Be well, everyone. Stay cool. Support the local arts. Support DIY, independent music venues and artists. Buy cool stuff. Buy music online. Buy t-shirts from bands. Go see them play live. Your life will be better for that too. This is me telling you these things. I know this from experience. Do it. Buy tickets for shows. Go see shows. Go support weirdos, because that's what makes the world fun and interesting. And be a weirdo yourself and make your own weird stuff, and people will come out and support you. That's how it works. We all make weird stuff, and we all go see each other's weird projects. We go see our friends, one-man shows, art installations, noise sets. We park in funny smelling alleys, and we go pay cash at the door to some kid who gives you a stamp and a funny look, and you go wait in line with a bunch of other weirdos to buy t-shirts or go to the bathroom or get a drink or buy a soda, buy a bottle of water out of a cooler at an unusual show space, because it's fun. It's what makes life worth living, doing weird stuff and supporting people who do weird stuff. So go have fun and make your art, because this is it. We get the one chance to do it all. Not to sound like such a dad, but hey, what can I say? I'm a dad, and it only works if we all support each other. So go do that. That is my message to you this weekend, and for the rest of this year, this summer. Think of a fun project. 3 months from now, find a place where you can do it, book it, and let me know about it. Write me hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com, or find me online at Randy S. Randall on the Instagrams, and tell me what you're doing. All right, bye.
And, but I'm listening to Elvis, I'm listening to Kiss, I'm listening to, all the typicals, Ted Nugent, Peter Frampton, The Doors, Hendrix, sort of all of that, Zeppelin, all of that stuff.